I loved both my dad and James Stewart, and he always made me think of my dad. They were the same person. Carol Burnett made one of the most popular TV shows ever. She got 25 Emmys and made a lot of people laugh every week. But behind the scenes on October 27, 1973, something happened that no one saw coming. The door was slammed so hard by her seven-season partner that the props shook down the hallway. After a few minutes, she fired him right then. Bets were being made on when it would happen by the crew. The craziest part? This wasn't even the worst theft she had to deal with in Hollywood. Today, we're going to talk about the people Carol Burnett wouldn't work with again. The 26th of April, 1933 saw the birth of Carol Burnett in San Antonio, Texas. It was a hard time for most people. Families were being torn apart by the Great Depression. And hers was the same. Their names were Joseph and Ina Louise, and they tried to keep things calm. He had a job at a gas station. She put together ads for movie companies. Still, they lost money faster than they could make it. They ended up living in one room without indoor plumbing and getting help from the government, friends, and welfare. It felt good to have even used clothes or a single chicken. Carol also saw how poor the people around her were, but she never felt alone because every house on the block looked the same. Her grandmother Mabel then stepped in to help, and those early years taught her how to handle things that were too heavy for a kid. When Carol turned 7, things changed again. Her dad started drinking more, and her parents split up. Her mom put her on a train to Hollywood to live with her grandmother, whom she called Nanny. Little girl and her cousin, who slept on a pull-out couch, barely had room in the new flat. From the outside, Hollywood looked nice, but things were tense in their home. Her dad's drinking kept bringing him down. Not long after, her mother's problems started to show. Carol saw adults break when they were stressed. She got to know addiction well. She learned early on that it's okay to laugh at scary things. And that laughing came from some of the worst places. Then one of the worst blows came. On October 29, 1943, her father died of heart failure caused by drinking too much. She was only 10 years old when the bad news came to school on a cold letter. She was too young to handle the shock, which came at her like a wave. No one knew how to talk to a child about death, so she had to hold on to her sadness and move on. She learned that stories could help people feel less alone even when they were in a lot of pain. She would give that gift to a lot of people one day. Going to school opened the door to better things. It was at Hollywood High that she learned she could make people laugh with just a look or a precise copy. People laughed a lot as she played Ingrid Bergman, which drew her closer to the stage. She got into UCLA with a journalism grant. The theater called to her even more, though. That would have cost money she didn't have, so she did odd jobs and kept her eyes on thoughts that wouldn't go away. People around her saw something in her that she was only now starting to see in herself. She went in a different way because of love. It was her junior year at UCLA when she quit in 1954. She and her boyfriend, Don Soroyan, drove across the country in a 1949 Ford that held more hope than cash. They only had $100 when they got to New York City. So they slept in their cars outside because they couldn't afford a room at the practice club. They looked up at the city and felt like it was testing them before giving them anything. But Carol wouldn't give up. The city had to move ahead of her. She quickly made friends in the practice club and got a job as a hat check girl. Every night, she hoped that someone would look past the hat rack and see what she can do. She got $1.50 in tips, but things changed in March 1955. The club girls held a review and invited stars and managers. Went on stage, and the right people heard her voice and laughed. Agents took note. The doors broke open. Soon, she saw her name on call sheets for different kinds of shows. The shy girl from San Antonio was on her way right away. The climb went on. Her friend told her in 1956 that she could try out for a musical called Once Upon a Mattress. She went, sang, and made them laugh. All of a sudden, she felt like Princess Winifred. The show opened on Broadway on November 25, 1959, and people fell in love with the brave girl who wore bloomers and splashed around in a pond full of water. Even though she was nominated for a Tony, she turned down a part in a movie so she wouldn't be stuck in one all the time. She didn't want a small box, but a big picture. One more chance came her way when Gary Moore saw her perform in a bar in 1960. She was on his show. Every week, the whole country saw how silly she was. Another honor she won was her first Emmy for Outstanding Performance in Variety in 1962. It was more than just a prize that win. The attention made her look like she belonged there. Then the moment that made her known would never be forgotten. It was in February 1962 that she sang "Made a Fool of Myself" over John Foster Dulles on national TV. Was silly. It was smart. It was just like her. The crowd exploded. CBS paid attention. They signed her and looked out for her, and soon she was able to make a risky 10-year deal that made it possible for her to have her own show. She was so clever that not many women in Hollywood had ever been that good. Even though she had a lot of success, she still put her family first. She got married to director Joe Hamilton on May 6, 1963, after he helped her make her nightclub act bigger. Their children were 3 girls. In December 1963, Carrie was the first to arrive, and in January 1967, Jodie followed. Aaron got here in August 1968. They laughed together. They had a hard time together. They both felt sad. Their fame didn't keep them from feeling real pain. Carrie was smart and brave, but she would die of cancer at the age of 38. Aaron would fight her drug use. But Carol loved her kids very much, and her fame could never change that. She was making one of TV's most popular shows while everyone watched her smile. She wanted to do things her way when she pitched CBS a weekly entertainment show in 1967. Harvey Korman was brought in after she put him through 12 auditions. It was Lyle Waggoner who she called in. Vicki Lawrence was in a neighborhood contest when she saw her and recognized her. It was cast. The first episode of The Carol Burnett Show aired on September 11, 1967. It was better than westerns. Every week, 30 million people watched it. It showed her famous ear tug, which was a love note to her grandmother who was watching at home. The crowd felt like family. People kept laughing. It shocked everyone in October 1967 when she walked down a flight of stairs in a dress made from real curtains with the rods still attached. A lot of people knew about the God of Wind joke. Now, the curtain dress is in the Smithsonian as a reminder that a good joke can last longer than most serious art. When Tim Conway joined as a writer in 1972, he made a doctor sketch that was so funny that Harvey Korman lost control on live TV because he was laughing so hard. Over the years, the show won 25 Emmys. Hollywood looked up to her. Her fans loved her. She even stood up to the network when advertisers said they would pull $5 million worth of ads because they thought a curtain rod joke was inappropriate. She also looked out for her cast by paying their salaries herself. When there was a fight, loyalty drove every choice she made. Even the letters that at first looked small got bigger. The mother of Vicki Lawrence became famous and finally had her own sitcom. The show wasn't just for fun, it was where tales were made. But Carol's fame never kept her from losing her heart. A lot of rumors hurt her marriage. In 1974, Joe told everyone that he had been seeing the show's set designer. Their relationship fell apart. After a year, she found out that her daughter Carrie had leukemia. Put everything on hold for her. Love kept her steady, but she was in a lot of pain. Then there was another shock. Someone else took over running the show without telling Joe. Back in 1976, she asked for a divorce. The loss of money was huge, and the mental damage was even worse. But she didn't give up. She stood firm, looked out for her girls, and kept the show that bore her name. She moved on with the same quiet grit she learned as a child and with honor after the divorce was completed in 1984. It was a new start for her when she met guitarist Brian Miller. He helped bring peace to the chaos after getting married on March 3, 1977. She sold her $2.8 million home in La Jolla in 1980 to get away from the media, who wouldn't leave her family alone while they dealt with Carrie's health problems. She learned again. That safety was more important than comfort. She was brave in more than one way. Friendly Fire, which came out in 1979, was based on a true story, which is what made her go to Congress when the Pentagon tried to stop the movie. She fought so that people could see it. She won. 64 million people saw the show. She won a lot of awards and showed that she could break hearts just as easily as she could heal them through laughing. When the 1960s came to an end, Carol Burnett was the star of a show that slowly turned into a machine. From 1967 to March 29, 1978, the last episode of The Carol Burnett Show aired. The show had 11 seasons. She made a world in those 279 shows where sketch comedy, music, and sadness all lived together. That world kept making money long after the cameras stopped rolling. The show's syndication rights have earned more than $100 million over the years, and reruns and edited collections are still bought, streamed, and shown all over the world. Even though it was decades ago, CBS bought the digital rights to all 11 seasons in 2018. This meant that her variety show could continue to reach people who were not even alive when it first aired. The show won 25 Emmys, but what really mattered was how much it affected people. Carol could make people laugh, hold their attention, and then switch to a serious song without losing anyone. This influenced writers and actors who went on to make sketch shows. It was the decisions she made that showed how she felt about other people. One of them was Jim Nabors. Because she liked him so much, she made him the first guest of every season. He was on TV about 50 times, which is pretty much the most of any guest in the history of TV. She demanded that he be paid $5,000 every time he showed up. She sometimes paid for him out of her own pocket when the show's budget didn't allow it. She did that because she thought loyalty was more important than a line on a chart and she thought they would get along. But that loyalty didn't always come back to her from other people. The older people in Hollywood watched as Carol's star rose. Some people liked her. Others just put up with her. When she was at a big event at the Beverly Hilton in the late 1960s, Cary Grant stood with studio executives and movie stars and spoke to her in a way she would never forget. He said that variety TV was dumb and that punchlines were not art in front of other people. These words hurt a woman who had just changed what TV comedy could look like. Even though she was nice, a wall went up. She said she wouldn't work with him on any more projects. They stayed cool and separate until he died in 1986. In a quiet way, that moment showed an old split in the company. On one side are movie stars, and on the other are TV comedians. They all act like they'll cheer for each other at award shows while secretly drawing lines. If Cary Grant was an insult to the public, Marlon Brando was a different kind of harm. Brando called her at 3 a.m. while she was working on the 1976 TV show Annie. The first thing he did was tell her how talented she was. The tone changed after that. The call became more detailed and graphic over the next 30 minutes. Before she knew it, she had to turn it off because it was too bright. She finally hung up the phone, feeling bad about herself and angry. Only to find out about it the next day. Some people said the call went on for more than an hour and twisted the facts for fun. After that, she stopped seeing him. Her team kept them apart when he showed up at the 1974 AFI event and other events. In an interview in 2025, she said that he was one of 5 people in Hollywood who had hurt her the most. Also, an unnamed CBS executive is said to have turned her down for 2 movie parts after her divorce. That early morning phone call was still fresh in people's minds, showing how easy it was for powerful people to cross lines in private and then act like nothing happened in public. On film, the show looked like a lot of fun. The people who made it work had their own storms going on behind the scenes. Harvey Korman was the best example of this. He and Carol made magic together for years. He took breaks in the middle of sketches, laughed so hard he was shaking, and helped even the most basic parts come to life. Then, sometime in the early 1970s, something changed. His mood changed all the time. Petula Clark, a guest star, made a small idea for her sketch at one rehearsal in October 1973. The officer yelled at her to stay in her lane. It got quiet in the room. Clark almost left the set. There wasn't a single bad day. The crew had already noticed that he was acting colder around Tim Conway because he wouldn't go along with the improvised jokes that made everyone laugh. Carol began messing up her lines because she was handling both his moods and the information she had in front of her. In real life, too, his life was in free fall. Harvey and Donna L. Hart were married for 17 years and had 4 children together before they split up in 1977. That breakup made him even more unstable. To get a raise of $15,000 per episode, more than anyone else on the cast, he walked into talks in the middle of season 7. He wanted to make as much as Tim Conway, who was already one of the best-paid comics on TV. The demand put a strain on a show that was already working with a small budget. It was important to Carol and the organizers that the show went well, but the mood on stage was even more important. Harvey's temper tantrums got louder. Crew members talked behind his back about how unpredictable he was and waited for the next explosion. It didn't take long for those explosions to happen. During one practice, he made fun of Lyle Waggoner's bodybuilding poses in front of the staff, which made Waggoner get angry. Vicki Lawrence remembers that he lost it in the clothing department in November 1972 because his pants were too tight. People froze when he yelled. What was supposed to be a simple fitting turned into a scene. When the crew talked about him, they started using words like impossible. Something heavy started to happen. Carol liked being silly and friendly, but the place where she worked now felt like a trap. She tried to give quiet warnings. She took him aside and told him she needed his best work. She also reminded him that her name was on the title card and it was her job if things went wrong. He didn't pay attention. On October 20, 1973, he skipped 2 rewrites of the script and then showed up to practice clearly drunk. Logs, the stage manager, even said that he smelled like alcohol. He lost his time. He lost his energy. The crew looked on in shock. Since then, some of them have been betting $50 on how long it would be until he left for good. Carol went home and wrote in her book about how upset she was. She wrote that she thought she was losing duty over her own show. After a week, things finally broke down. After another tense practice on October 27, 1973, she went down the hall to Harvey's dressing room. She wanted to see how he was feeling so she could try to calm him down. He yelled at her and told her it wasn't her business when she walked in. He then slammed the door so hard that props shook down the hall. It was heard from several rooms away. It wasn't just rude, it was also in public. Everyone could see how little respect he still had for her power. Right away, Carol called Harvey's agent at William Morris to let him know that Harvey would not be on the show after that night's tape. When she got back to his dressing room, she told him straight out that his behavior was ruining her performance and making the whole show bad. After 7 years, her boyfriend broke up with her. The team was shocked, but some of them said they were glad it was over. They knew this was going to happen. Even so, Carol didn't want the story to end on a bad note if she could help it. She thought about what to do over the weekend. She told Harvey that if he came back, he had to show that he knew what was wrong and could change the energy he brought. She let him leave, but warned him that if he came back, he would be sent away for good if he wasn't happy. She put up a sign in the hallway that said "Whistle down the hall Monday" to make her point clear. It was an easy request with a clear meaning. Harvey came up on Monday, October 29, and did just that. The crew watched as he skipped down the hall humming "Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky." They laughed out loud. The tension was broken. He came back, and Carol welcomed him. The show then went on. After that, he went to the CBS bar, stood on top of the counter, and yelled, "She fired me." He told the story with a strange mix of pride and shame, saying that he admired her strength. During the crisis, they still had good professional chemistry, and in some ways it got stronger because of it. In 1974, he won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actor. Years later, at his grave, a lot of people said that getting fired had made their relationship stronger and that they respected each other more when they got back together for events. If you take away Carol from Corman's career, it rarely hit that same high point. He tried to make his own car after leaving the show in 1977. That same year, the Harvey Korman Show started, but its numbers dropped right away. CBS stopped it after just 5 shows. Harvey said it was the worst mistake he had ever made in his career. He said that people only liked him when he was with Carol and couldn't see him as a star on his own. Carol never brags. She stayed his friend until he died on May 29, 2008, at the age of 81. At the funeral service where she spoke, people talked about how he had a long career and 15 Emmy Awards. But the line that got people's attention was the one that said that his firing from her show was a turning point. Instead of breaking their bond, that made it stronger. The effects of the fight weren't just felt by co-stars. There was shock in Carol's domestic life as well. In 1982, she learned that her husband, Joe Hamilton, who also produced her show, had set up Hamilton Productions without anyone knowing. He registered spin-offs and linked properties like Mama's Family under his own name through that company without telling her. Later, court papers showed that he had set up multiple companies to claim ownership of things that came straight from her work, such as valuable syndication rights. During their split in 1984, more information came to light. There was no longer any sign of a single, united relationship. Instead, there were secrets, cheating, and cold calculations. When she talked to him about it at CBS, he supposedly told her that feelings had nothing to do with business choices. She felt betrayed twice, as his wife and as the person who came up with the idea for the brand he was making. The court case about that treachery went on for almost a year. Every move in court was written about in magazines like People and Variety. In the end, the judge gave her the name of the show and 60% of the money made from distribution. It looked like a win on paper. Behind closed doors, it hurt. She made a show that made other people rich. She now knew that someone she trusted had taken some of those gains without telling her. No matter how bad the storm was, Carol always tried to make things fair where she could. Vicki Lawrence saw a gap in her paychecks in 1974 and could no longer forget about it. He was making $8,000 a show, but she was making a lot less. She turned to Carol for help. Carol didn't run away from the fight, she stood by her side. They worked together to get CBS to pay Vicki $6,500 an episode. That was still less than Lyle, but it closed the gap and showed how to be quiet. Before Carol, women in TV were often happy just to be there. She helped a younger female co-star ask for more. There were also changes in the outside world. Carol's name kept showing up in strange places. She did the role of Horton in the 1970 animated special Horton Hears a Who. A lot of people loved the show because it taught them to care for the littlest and weakest. In 2021, decades later, 6 Dr. Seuss books were taken off the shelves because they had racist images in them, such as military cartoons that shocked readers when they were found again. There was a big difference between the two. Carol had read a story that was kind and open to everyone, while the person who wrote it was being looked over again for offensive pictures. People all over the world were arguing about how to separate art from its artist, which gave her older work a new context. The things she left behind did not stop. The White House gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005, recognizing how important she is to American culture. She won the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2013. She joined comedians like Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby on the list, which shows how difficult and changing the idea of a comedy legend can be. Years after the end of her show in 1978, millions of people still watch reruns and clips of it every month. In the beginning of 2025, her official YouTube account started showing episodes all the time. In just 3 months, it had 700 million views. Younger viewers found her on their phones and computers instead of on Saturday night TV. However, they laughed at the same jokes. In 2024, she was nominated for a Primetime Emmy for her role in Palm Royale. At 92 years old, she was the oldest woman to be recognized in a comedy acting category. That number shocked even people who have worked in the field for a long time. It meant she was still a part of the talk, not just a reference to something from the past. Her personal story was just as important as the awards and numbers she had won. Back in the 1950s, she got mumps and couldn't have children. She rarely talked about this in public. She put everything she had into her family and her job after adopting 3 kids. By 1991, it was thought that her estate was worth about $75 million. That amount had grown to about $500 million by 2025, thanks to residuals from her TV shows, licensing deals, book sales, and continued syndication. Along with other memoirs, her autobiography, One More Time, stayed in print and sold regularly, which helped her money and power. Old sketches kept getting licensed to be used in ads. With new shows and online packages, old physical comedy can now bring in new money. The work and the pain didn't go away as she got older. Fans thought she would be in a Blazing Saddles remake because she had worked with Mel Brooks and Harvey Korman, who had a big part in the first movie, in the past. But she turned down a cameo in the movie in 2025. She said no. She said she was afraid that old problems would come up again, which was a reference to the problems she had with Korman in the last few years of her show. A plaque with his name on it still hung on the door of his old dressing room at CBS. It was both a tribute and a memory. It represented the complicated relationship they had, one that was full of smarts, anger, firing, healing, and finally love. Carol kept telling parts of her own story the whole time. She wrote about a crazy event that happened during a picture shoot with President Ronald Reagan in 1982 in a book that came out in 2016. In a busy room with a magazine crew, she chose to play a joke on them by giving the staff the moon. The magazine didn't want to print the picture because they were afraid of backlash from Reagan's team and conservative fans. She later said she might have been too funny with the joke. The picture that wasn't released became part of her story. Proof that she could still get a line wrong, just like when she tried the limits on stage. She kept track of the people who had hurt her along the way. In that 2025 talk, she named 5 people who had hurt her. These included Marlon Brando's late-night call, Cary Grant's rude comment about her art, and an unnamed executive who wouldn't let her work in movies after her divorce. She also hinted at years of mischief and shame in public that most people never saw. However, the same woman who remembered those things also spoke at Harvey Korman's funeral in 2008. She told everyone in the room that his timing was valuable and that even the break they took had helped their later work. She admitted that even though getting fired from her show seemed bad at the time, it had turned out to be a good thing that made them respect each other more. When they both come back to the stage.